Look up on a clear night. Thousands of points of light scatter across the darkness, each one a sun, massive, ancient, burning with unimaginable energy. And almost instinctively, something deep inside the human soul reaches toward them. We want to go there. We have always wanted to go there. Science fiction told us we would. It promised us that with enough technology, enough ambition, enough rocket fuel, we would one day cross the galaxy the way sailors once crossed oceans. But here is what science fiction never told you, and what most science communicators are too afraid to say clearly. The universe has a rule, one absolute, unbreakable rule, and it does not care about your dreams. That rule is the speed of light, 300,000 kilometers per second. And before you dismiss that as just another speed limit, the kind you ignore on a highway, understand what it actually means. This is not a restriction on your engines. This is the speed at which reality itself propagates. It is the absolute ceiling of cause and effect. It is baked into the mathematical architecture of everything that exists. And when you truly understand its implications, the dream of casually hopping between star systems does not just become difficult, it becomes something far more disturbing. It becomes a logical impossibility that threatens the very structure of time. That is what this script is about, not the comfortable version, the real version, the one that starts with geometry and ends somewhere that will permanently change how you see the night sky. To understand why the stars are beyond our reach in the way they truly are, you first have to discard almost everything your intuition tells you about how space and time work. For centuries, the greatest minds in human history assumed space was simply an empty stage, a neutral backdrop where events occurred. And time was a universal clock, ticking at the same rhythm for everyone everywhere, regardless of what they were doing or how fast they were moving. This seemed obvious, it seemed self-evident, and it was completely wrong. The reality is more elegant, more precise, and far more strict. Space and time are not two separate things. They are a single continuous fabric, one unified structure physicists call space-time. And within this fabric, everything in existence, every particle, every planet, every person is always in motion. Here is where it gets extraordinary. Everything moves through space-time at exactly the same combined speed. That speed is equal to the speed of light. Right now, sitting still, reading these words, you are traveling at the speed of light. Because you are barely moving through space, almost your entire cosmic velocity is being spent moving through time. You are racing into the future at full throttle every second of every day without taking a single physical step. Now ask yourself, what happens when you start moving through space? When you walk, run, or accelerate in a spacecraft, you are borrowing from that fixed cosmic budget. Every unit of speed you dedicate to crossing space is one less unit available for moving through time. The faster you move through space, the slower you move through time. This is not a mechanical glitch in a clock. It is not an optical illusion. It is the architecture of creation itself, confirmed experimentally, measured precisely, and written into every equation that describes the universe we inhabit. Look toward Alpha Centauri, the nearest star system to our own. The light you see from it tonight left those stars more than 4 years ago, traveling at 300,000 kilometers per second without pause. That is the closest neighbor we have, and light itself takes 4 years to make the trip. When you truly absorb that distance, the real conversation about interstellar travel begins. And it begins not with optimism, but with mathematics. Suppose humanity achieves something extraordinary. Suppose we build a spacecraft capable of traveling at 99% the speed of light, a vehicle that dwarfs anything ever conceived, powered by technology we do not yet possess. You climb aboard and set a course for Alpha Centauri. As you accelerate to that tremendous velocity, something remarkable begins to happen to time itself. Your movement through space becomes so dominant in your cosmic budget that your passage through time slows to a crawl. From inside the ship, the journey might feel like a matter of months. You watch the stars shift around you. You feel genuinely like you have conquered something vast. But the universe keeps its accounting perfectly. When you return to Earth, triumphant and barely aged, you discover that for everyone who remained behind, who spent none of their cosmic velocity on moving through space, nearly a decade has passed. Your closest friends are older. Children you knew have grown. And that is just for the nearest star. Push the journey further to stars hundreds of light years away, and you return to find the civilization you left behind has dissolved entirely into history. This is time dilation. It is not theoretical. It is experimentally measured. It is real. And this single phenomenon dismantles the entire premise of an interstellar civilization as science fiction imagines it. You cannot maintain continuous relationships with worlds where even a basic exchange of information takes years to complete. You cannot govern, trade with, or even stay emotionally connected to communities separated by that kind of temporal gulf. The physics we have confirmed through decades of precision measurement tells us directly that a coherent, interconnected interstellar empire is a geometric impossibility. The universe has not imprisoned us cruelly or carelessly. It has placed us here within a structure of cause and effect so precise that crossing it without consequence is not merely difficult, it is logically forbidden. And yet, the story does not end with confinement. The true nature of space is far more flexible than this picture suggests, and the geometry of reality hides surprises that took decades of serious mathematics to uncover. Your entire life, you have been told that gravity is a force, an invisible magnetic pull that drags objects toward one another. It is one of the most persistent and misleading simplifications in all of science education. Gravity is not a force. Gravity is geometry. Space is not an empty, passive stage. It is a real, dynamic, structured fabric. And when you place something massive inside it, a planet, a star, a galaxy, that fabric curves, it bends around the mass the way a heavy sphere sinks into a stretched elastic sheet, creating a valley that smaller objects naturally follow. The small object circling the larger one is not being pulled by any mysterious force. It is simply following the shape of the space that has been altered around it. This changes everything, because if space can curve, bend, compress, and stretch under the influence of mass and energy, then it is not a fixed, immutable grid. It is dynamic. It responds. It can be shaped. And if it can be shaped, the logical question, the one that occupied serious theoretical physics for decades, becomes this: could we shape it deliberately and use that malleability to our advantage? We know light always travels at 300,000 kilometers per second through the fabric of space-time. That is the inviolable rule. But what if the solution is not to move through the fabric faster? What if the solution is to move the fabric itself? Here is where the mathematics of general relativity produces something genuinely astonishing. Instead of accelerating a ship through space toward a distant star, imagine compressing the space in front of the ship and expanding the space behind it. Picture a long carpet stretching across a room. You want to reach the far end without walking across it. So you grab the carpet and fold it toward you, pulling the far end to your feet. Then let it unfold behind you. You have barely moved, but the destination came to you. This is the conceptual foundation of what physicists call a warp drive, and it was formalized mathematically in 1994 by physicist Miguel Alcubierre, whose equations showed that general relativity does not explicitly forbid this kind of spatial manipulation. The ship itself, sitting inside a stable bubble of undistorted space, never locally exceeds the speed of light. The bubble rides a wave of curved space-time like a surfer riding a wave across the ocean. From inside the bubble, the laws of physics remain perfectly intact. No acceleration is felt. No time dilation distorts the journey. The destination arrives in days rather than millennia. The mathematics is genuinely elegant. It does not require breaking the cosmic speed limit. It does not invert cause and effect, at least, not at first glance. It moves the space rather than the ship. And on the surface, it appears to thread the needle perfectly, respecting every law that makes the universe coherent while still achieving what seemed geometrically forbidden. This sounds like the solution. The final answer: the door the universe left slightly open, but the universe does not leave doors open carelessly. And bending the very structure of reality demands a payment so extreme that it crashes directly into another wall, one built not from engineering limitations, but from pure logic. Because the moment you look closely at what an Alcubierre drive actually requires to function, the first problem it presents is not mechanical, it is material. To compress space in front of the ship and expand it behind, the equations demand a specific type of energy. Not the energy of nuclear fusion, not the output of a star, something categorically different, something that has no confirmed large-scale physical existence. Negative energy, matter with less than zero mass. A substance that does not attract space gravitationally, but pushes it outward. Everything in the observable universe, every atom, every galaxy, every form of matter we have ever detected carries positive mass. It curves space inward. To make the warp bubble function, you need the precise opposite. You need something that curves space outward, that repels rather than attracts, that weighs less than absolute nothing. The quantum vacuum offers faint mathematical hints that negative energy fluctuations can exist at microscopic scales. Effects like the Casimir force give us a glimpse. But stabilizing the enormous quantity required to move a spacecraft would mean violating nearly every conservation law that holds the universe in its current coherent form. But set that aside. Grant the miracle. Suppose the engineering problem is solved and the negative energy is produced and contained. You build your warp bubble, you ride your wave of curved spacetime across the interstellar void. You have, by every practical measure, traveled faster than light. And here is where the real trap closes, not from engineering, not from energy requirements, but from the geometry of time itself. To understand what you have actually done by traveling faster than light, you must confront one of the most uncomfortable truths in all of physics. There is no universal now. Your present moment and another person's present moment only coincide perfectly if you are in exactly the same location and completely at rest relative to each other. The moment either of you moves, your planes of simultaneity, your definitions of what is happening right now across the universe tilt relative to each other. The effect is negligible at everyday human speeds. Two people on the same street, one walking and one sitting on a bench, have present moments that differ by billionths of a second. At human scale, this is meaningless. But project that tiny tilt across cosmic distances toward the Andromeda galaxy, 2.5 million light years away, and the consequences become monstrous. For the person sitting on the bench, their present moment at Andromeda corresponds to an alien civilization just beginning to discuss whether to visit Earth. For the person walking, whose plane of time tilts slightly toward the future of that distant galaxy, the fleet has already launched and is heading our way. Two people standing meters apart on the same street have cosmically distinct present moments. Now bring this into your faster-than-light journey. You use your warp bubble to travel to a star 10 light years away, arriving in a single day. You land on a planet and encounter a local inhabitant moving toward Earth. Due to that inhabitant's motion in your direction, their present moment on Earth corresponds to a point 10 years in Earth's past. There now is your planet's yesterday a decade ago. Here is where the paradox strikes. If you borrow that alien's warp technology and use their present moment as your departure point for the return journey, you do not arrive back on Earth after your trip. You arrive before you left. You step onto the surface of your home planet and watch yourself preparing to board the original ship. And if you pick up a weapon and destroy that ship before it launches, the ship never launches. You never make the journey. You never return. The ship is never destroyed. So it launches. So you travel. So you return. So you destroy it. So it never launches. This is not a philosophical puzzle. This is the complete collapse of cause and effect, the foundational principle upon which every physical law in the universe is constructed. If an effect can eliminate its own cause, the mathematical structure of reality itself dissolves into contradiction. Our universe is built on causality in the most absolute sense. Every equation in physics assumes it. Every measurement depends on it. Faster than light travel, achieved through any conceivable geometric trick, is time travel. And the cosmos does not tolerate paradoxes. At this point, the argument appears complete. The warp drive demands impossible materials. And even if those were provided, the geometry of space-time itself turns faster than light travel into a causality-destroying time machine. The universe seems to have sealed every exit. But here is what makes this even more remarkable. The universe does not simply rely on logical arguments to enforce its own rules. It has a physical immune system, and understanding how it works reveals something about the nature of reality that goes far beyond any question of spacecraft design. To see how the universe actively defends its own logical structure, you have to descend to the smallest scale physics can describe the quantum realm. You were taught in school that empty space is empty. That is flatly incorrect. The vacuum of space is not a quiet void. It seethes with energy. Ghostly particles continuously flicker into existence from nothing and vanish again in fractions of a second too brief to measure directly. This is not abstract speculation. It is a measured, experimentally confirmed fact, verified daily in the world's most precise laboratories. The quantum vacuum is perpetually alive, even in the deepest darkness between galaxies. Now imagine your warp drive is operational. You have bent space sufficiently to create a geometric shortcut that, by the logic of relativity we just traced, connects your future departure point with a moment in the past at your destination. You have created, in the fabric of space-time, a closed loop in time. Consider what happens next in physical terms. Think of a microphone placed too close to a loudspeaker on a stage. The microphone picks up a tiny ambient sound. The speaker amplifies it and projects it outward. The microphone captures that same sound, now louder, and sends it back through the speaker again. Within a fraction of a second, the feedback loop has amplified a whisper into an ear-splitting shriek that destroys the equipment. The universe executes the identical process but with quantum vacuum particles rather than sound waves. The instant your technology curves space-time enough to allow even a single photon or virtual particle to travel backward in time through your shortcut, that particle enters the loop. It arrives in the past, travels through normal space, and re-enters the geometric tunnel again, and again, and again, infinitely in an interval that lasts exactly 0 seconds of elapsed time. With each cycle, its energy compounds. It adds to itself continuously, amplifying without limit. Just like the microphone feedback, but operating at a scale the human mind has no natural framework for grasping. The result is both devastating and, in a deep sense, beautiful. In the microsecond before your ship can even begin to traverse the time-violating route, the accumulated energy of the quantum vacuum becomes infinite at that point in space-time. A catastrophic burst of radiation and light obliterates the geometric connection from the inside outward. The shortcut incinerates itself. The paradox never materializes not because of any external enforcement, but because the mathematical structure of reality contains within itself the mechanism for its own protection. The universe does not wait for a paradox to occur. It burns the path before the first footstep falls. This is the honest conclusion that serious physics arrives at after following the argument all the way through. Brute force fails. Geometric cleverness fails. The quantum vacuum itself acts as an immune system, neutralizing any configuration of a spacetime that would allow cause and effect to be violated. The door is not merely locked, it is constructed in such a way that any attempt to pick the lock triggers its own destruction. Which brings us to the final question. If every physical avenue is closed, if matter, energy, geometry, and quantum mechanics all conspire to keep us within our cosmic neighborhood, what does that mean for our place in the universe? The answer is not what you expect. Because the very barriers that appear to confine us are, on closer examination, the precise conditions that make our existence possible at all. Entropy is the measure of disorder in a physical system, and it moves in only one direction. Coffee cools, buildings crumble, stars exhaust their fuel and die in cold darkness. The total disorder of any closed system always increases over time. This is not a tendency or a statistical preference. It is one of the most rigorously confirmed laws in all of physics. And it is directly responsible for the one thing that makes conscious life possible, the arrow of time, the reason you remember yesterday and not tomorrow, the reason causes precede effects, the reason complexity can build over billions of years rather than collapsing the moment it forms. Our universe began in a state of almost inconceivably perfect order, a precise geometric configuration at the moment of its origin that defies any casual explanation. That extraordinarily low initial entropy is what gave the universe the room to grow structure, to form galaxies, stars, stable planetary systems, and ultimately the astonishingly delicate machinery of biology. Every complex structure you see, every mountain, every ocean, every living cell exists because the universe started with enough order to spend and has been spending it slowly ever since. Now consider what would happen if the universe were smaller, or if the speed of light were not the strict finite limit it is. Stars would interact gravitationally with one another almost instantaneously. The combined gravitational influence of all matter in a compact, rapidly communicating universe would have driven everything toward premature collapse long before any complexity had time to emerge. The vast, dark, seemingly empty distance between stars is not wasted space. It is thermal insulation. It is the mechanism that forces the universe to burn slowly enough that something as improbable and fragile as a human mind has billions of years to assemble itself from dead matter, and then look upward to ask why it exists. The speed of light is not a cosmic prison warden. It is the regulator that keeps the engine of existence running at the precise speed life requires. The immense distances that appear to exile us from the stars are the same distances that shield us from their radiation, moderate the rate of gravitational interaction, and extend the available window of complexity to timescales vast enough to permit evolution, civilization, and thought. You were taught to resent the distance. The honest response is closer to gratitude. And here is the final truth this entire argument has been building toward. Every physical barrier examined the speed of light, time dilation, the energy requirements of space-time manipulation, the quantum immune system of causality, the entropic necessity of cosmic scale, every one of these points to a single conclusion. The universe was not designed for the transport of matter across interstellar distances. It was designed for something else, something that does not require fuel, does not accumulate time debt, and is not blocked by any geometric boundary. The mathematics governing the spin of a galaxy a billion light years away is exactly identical to the mathematics your mind processes when it comprehends that galaxy. Not similar, identical. When you grasp a genuine truth about the structure of the cosmos, you are not passively receiving information from a distance. You are participating in the same mathematical reality that generates and sustains every structure in existence. The mind that understands the universe is not separate from the universe it understands. It is the universe becoming aware of itself, locally, temporarily, miraculously. The stars are not prizes to be claimed by cramming matter into a metal container and igniting an engine. They are a language, and the human capacity to read that language, to decode the precise geometry written across billions of light years using nothing but mathematics and observation, is itself the most extraordinary form of interstellar travel the laws of physics permit. The distance is real, the barriers are absolute, and they are the exact conditions that make you possible. If that kind of rigorous, honest, deep exploration of how the universe actually works is what you are here for, subscribe, share this with someone whose mind is ready for it, and join the search for the uncomfortable truths the cosmos has been waiting for us to find.